Ryan Voss had no idea what he had gotten himself into. One moment, he was a diplomat representing Earth in an intergalactic peace summit. The next, he was standing in the Grand Hall of the Krithari, a warrior race known for their icy tempers and even colder bodies. And in front of him, dressed in silver armor that shimmered like frost, was Zara Kalthar, the Krithari princess, his new wife, and the woman who could freeze a man solid with a single kiss. Ryan glanced around the towering crystal walls of the Krithari palace. It was beautiful in a deadly kind of way, much like Zara herself. She stood with perfect posture, her silver-white hair falling past her shoulders, her violet eyes locked onto him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Are you afraid, human?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. Her voice was smooth, like ice cracking under pressure. Ryan grinned, trying to hide the fact that his heart was hammering in his chest. "Should I be?" Zara stepped closer, and Ryan fought the urge to shiver. The air around her was cold enough to make his breath fog. "You understand little of our ways," she said. "A Krithari warrior does not simply marry. You must prove yourself worthy." Ryan sighed, already regretting whatever intergalactic law had forced him into this situation. "Look, I'm a diplomat, not a gladiator. Can't we just shake hands and call it a day?" The crowd of Krithari warriors burst into laughter. Zara, however, did not smile. "You will face the trial of ice and fire. If you fail, our marriage is meaningless. If you succeed—" She paused, her lips curving into the faintest smirk. "Then perhaps I will consider you more than just a fragile human." Ryan swallowed hard. "Right. Trial of ice and fire. Sounds fun. The challenge begins." The next morning, Ryan stood in the center of the Krithari battle arena. The floor beneath him was solid ice, slick and treacherous. Across from him stood Vosk, a towering Krithari warrior with skin as pale as snow and eyes that glowed an eerie blue. Unlike Zara, whose cold touch was controlled, Vosk had no such restraint. One strike from him could turn Ryan into a human popsicle. Zara stood on the sidelines, watching intently. Ryan had spent the entire night trying to convince her that Earth diplomacy was about words, not fists. But she had simply shrugged and handed him a dagger made of frozen steel. Now, as Vosk lunged at him, Ryan realized just how outmatched he was. He ducked at the last second, feeling the icy wind rush past his ear. "Think, Ryan. You're not stronger, you're not faster, but you are smarter." He needed a plan. He noticed that whenever Vosk attacked, his body radiated extreme cold, but after every missed strike, his movements slowed just a little. "He's burning too much energy." Ryan dodged again, then again, forcing Vosk to chase him across the ice. The crowd jeered, calling him a coward, but Ryan ignored them. He was playing the long game. Finally, Vosk snarled in frustration and launched one final, all-out attack. Ryan waited until the last possible second, then dived sideways. Vosk's momentum carried him too far, and he slipped on the ice, crashing down hard. The crowd gasped as the mighty warrior struggled to stand, his breath ragged, his movements sluggish. Ryan stood over him, flipping the dagger in his hand. "So, do I win?" Silence. Then, to his surprise, Zara started clapping. The warriors followed, their laughter and cheers filling the arena. Vosk, now realizing what had happened, let out a booming laugh and clapped Ryan on the shoulder, nearly knocking him over. Zara approached, her violet eyes studying him with newfound curiosity. "You are either the most foolish human I have ever met," she said, "or the most clever." Ryan smirked. "Why not both?" Zara leaned in slightly, her icy breath sending a chill down his spine. "Perhaps this marriage will be more interesting than I thought." Ryan exhaled, half in relief, half in anticipation. He had survived, but something told him that this was only the beginning. Ryan barely had time to celebrate his victory before the next challenge arrived. The Krithari palace was alive with the sound of feasting. Warriors clashed their silver goblets together, their laughter booming across the grand hall. It was a victory feast. Ryan had survived the trial of ice and fire. Now, according to Krithari custom, he was officially Zara's husband. Not that she seemed impressed. Ziara sat beside him at the long banquet table, her violet eyes unreadable. She had changed from her silver armor into a flowing dark blue robe embroidered with frost-like patterns. Her silver-white hair cascaded over her shoulders, catching the glow of the ice torches lining the hall. Ryan leaned over slightly. "So, do I get a trophy for winning? Maybe a medal that says, 'Didn't get frozen to death'?" Ziara didn't smile. Instead, she took a sip from her goblet. "You may have outsmarted Vosk, but that does not mean you have proven yourself completely." Ryan sighed. "Of course not. There's always something else, isn't there?" Before Ziara could respond, a Krithari elder rose from his seat and clapped his hands. The hall grew quiet. "Now that the human has passed the trial," the elder announced, his icy blue eyes scanning the crowd, "it is time for the rite of unity." Ryan tensed. That didn't sound good. Ziara finally turned to him, her expression unreadable. "This is our true test of bonding." Ryan blinked. "Wait, what?" The elder continued. "The rite of unity requires both partners to share their essence. The bond will determine their compatibility." Ryan frowned. "That's really vague. What does that actually mean?" Ziara hesitated for the first time that night. "It means," she said slowly, "that you must endure my touch." The room fell silent. Every Krithari warrior watched with eager anticipation. Ryan swallowed. He had heard the rumors. Ziara's kiss could turn a man to solid ice. He had no idea how he was supposed to survive that. And if I don't?" Ryan asked, though he already knew the answer. "The bond will be rejected," Ziara said simply. "And our marriage will be meaningless." Ryan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. He had barely escaped freezing to death once today, and now they expected him to do it voluntarily. He looked at Ziara. Her expression was carefully guarded, but something in her eyes told him she wasn't as confident about this as she seemed. Ryan sighed. "All right, let's do it." A kiss like ice and fire. The hall moved in slow motion as Ziara leaned forward. Ryan could feel the temperature around him drop. His breath fogged in the air. His fingers tingled with the bite of frost. Ziara cupped his face gently, her touch colder than anything he had ever felt. It wasn't just cold. It was pure, absolute frost. A wave of ice surged through him, threatening to shut down every nerve in his body. But Ryan didn't pull away. The Krithari warriors leaned in, waiting for him to freeze over. But something strange was happening. Ziara's eyes widened in shock. The ice wasn't spreading. Ryan could feel the frost trying to consume him, but deep within, something pushed back, a warmth he couldn't explain. He focused on Ziara, not just her icy touch, but the fire beneath it, the hidden warmth she had never been allowed to share. Ziara gasped. The frost flickered, then softened. The air around them grew still. The hall erupted in murmurs. Ryan grinned, despite the chill still clinging to his skin. "Well," he said, his voice slightly shaky, "that wasn't so bad." Ziara stared at him, completely speechless. For the first time in her life, her kiss hadn't turned someone to ice. And for the first time, she didn't know what that meant. The banquet hall was frozen in silence. Hundreds of Krithari warriors stared, their glowing blue eyes wide with shock. Zara's kiss had not turned Ryan to ice. It was unheard of, impossible, and yet there he was still breathing. Ziara pulled away quickly, her heart pounding. She touched her own lips in disbelief. How? Her frost had been strong. She had felt it surge through him. But instead of freezing solid, he had resisted. Ryan blinked, shaking his hands as if testing to see if they still worked. "Okay," he muttered. "That was, really cold." A low murmur spread across the hall. The Krithari elders exchanged glances, whispering in their ancient language. Warriors gripped their weapons, as if unsure whether to celebrate or attack. The elder who had announced the rite of unity finally spoke. "This is unprecedented." His voice was heavy with disbelief. "No one has ever resisted the ice kiss." Ziara clenched her fists. "Perhaps the bond rejected him," she said, though the words felt hollow even to her. She knew that wasn't true. She had felt something different, a warmth fighting against the ice. Ryan rubbed his arms and exhaled, sending a small cloud of frost into the air. "Look, I don't know how this works, but I'm still here," He turned to Ziara, raising an eyebrow. Does that mean we passed the test? Before she could answer, a deep, mocking laugh rang through the hall. A figure stepped forward from the crowd, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing silver eyes. His armor was adorned with jagged ice spikes, and a scar ran down his left cheek. Ziara's expression darkened. Varric. Ryan didn't know much about Crithari politics yet, but from the way everyone stiffened, he could tell this guide was bad news. Varric smirked. The great warrior Princess Ziara, bonded to a soft-skinned human. How disappointing. His voice dripped with mockery. Ryan crossed his arms. Nice to meet you too, Frostbite. Several warriors gasped. A few stifled laughter. Varric's smirk vanished. His jaw tightened. Ziara stepped in front of Ryan, her tone sharp. State your business, Varric. Varric's silver eyes gleamed. The right of unity may have spared him, for now, but he is not Crithari. He is unproven. If he wishes to stand beside you, let him face me in the trial of the clans. Ryan sighed. Another trial? You guys really like these, huh? Ziara shot him a look that said not now. She turned back to Varric. You have no right to challenge him. Oh, but I do, Varric said smoothly. He has bonded with our princess. The clans must see if he is worthy. His smirk returned. Unless, of course, you're afraid he'll shatter like fragile earth glass. Ryan rolled his eyes. Dude, I literally just survived a death kiss. What else could you possibly throw at me? Varric's grin widened. Oh, human, you have no idea. The next challenge. An hour later, Ryan regretted everything. He stood at the edge of a massive ice arena carved into the palace grounds. A freezing wind howled across the stadium. Thousands of Crithari warriors had gathered in the stands, waiting for the battle to begin. Ziara stood beside him, adjusting the thin silver armor they had given him. You don't have to do this. Ryan glanced at her. Wouldn't that make me look weak? Ziara hesitated, then sighed. Yes. Then I guess I have to. Her fingers brushed against his wrist, and for the first time, there was no icy sting, just a faint, lingering cold. Ryan smirked. You're warming up to me. Ziara rolled her eyes, but didn't pull away. Try not to die. Ryan grinned as he stepped onto the battlefield. Across from him, Varric stood, cracking his knuckles. The elder raised his hand. Begin. A loud horn echoed through the icy stadium. The trial of the clans had begun. Ryan barely had time to react before Varric lunged forward, moving much faster than any human should. His ice-forged fist came straight for Ryan's face. Ryan dodged, barely. The force of the punch sent a cold shockwave behind him, freezing part of the ground solid. Okay, Ryan muttered, shaking off the chill. Good to know. One punch, and I'm a human popsicle. Varric grinned. At least you understand your place. Ryan didn't reply. He was too busy thinking. Ziara had told him Crithari warriors relied on strength and ice-forged energy, but he was human. If he fought like them, he'd lose. Time to fight smart. Varric attacked again, but this time, Ryan didn't dodge. Instead, he sidestepped at the last second, grabbed Varric's arm, and used his own momentum against him. Varric stumbled forward, caught off guard. The crowd gasped. Ziara's lips twitched. She knew exactly what Ryan was doing. Ryan smirked. Guess brute strength isn't everything. Varric growled, his eyes flashing with fury. A freezing mist swirled around his fists. The temperature dropped. Ryan's breath came out in white clouds. This was bad. Ziara clenched her fists from the sidelines. Ryan, he's channeling Crithari frost energy. If he lands a hit, you'll... Too late. Varric slammed his fist into the ground. Ice exploded outward in jagged spikes, racing toward Ryan. Ryan's eyes widened. Oh, come on. He leaped backward just in time, but his foot slipped on the ice. He crashed onto the frozen ground, skidding dangerously close to the edge of the arena. The Crithari warriors roared in excitement. To them, the fight was as good as over. Varric stood tall, his breath steady. Pathetic. You should have never stepped onto this battlefield. Ryan gritted his teeth. His body ached from the cold, but he forced himself to stand. Yeah, well, I'm stubborn. Varric raised his hand for the final blow. The ice beneath Ryan cracked, ready to trap him in frost. Then, Ryan smirked. "Hey, Varric," he said, "you forgot something." Varric hesitated. "What?" Ryan lifted his foot and stomped on the ice beneath him, hard. The frozen ground had already been weakened by Varric's own attack. Ryan had been standing near the fault line. The ice shattered. Varric's footing gave out, and before he could react, he slipped and fell hard. For a moment, the entire stadium went silent. Then, laughter. Ryan dusted off his hands. Oops, guess strength isn't everything after all. The warriors watching burst into cheers and roars. Even the elders looked amused. Ziara let out a slow breath, her lips curving into a small, proud smile. Varric's face burned with humiliation. He pushed himself up, but before he could say anything, the elder raised his hand. "The trial is over," the elder announced. "The human has proven his worth." Ryan exhaled in relief. He turned to Zara with a cocky grin. "Told you I had a plan." She stepped forward, arms crossed. "You almost got yourself frozen." Ryan smirked. "Yeah, but I didn't." Ziara rolled her eyes, but she didn't look away. For the first time, there was warmth in her gaze. Varric stormed off in silence, his pride shattered. Ryan glanced around the cheering arena. "So, does this mean they actually like me now?" Ziara sighed. "They don't hate you as much." Ryan grinned. "I'll take it." As the crowd cheered, Ziara shook her head. This human was impossible, and somehow, she didn't mind that anymore. Ryan had barely stepped out of the arena before he was surrounded by a group of Krithari warriors. Some looked at him with newfound respect. Others still glared as if they wanted to challenge him next. Ziara stood beside him, arms crossed. "You survived." Ryan flashed a grin. "I knew you had faith in me." "I didn't say that." He chuckled, but before he could tease her more, a deep voice interrupted. "The human has spirit." Ryan turned to see an older warrior approaching. His white hair was braided in tight rows, and a thick fur cloak draped over his shoulders. This was Elder Kalos, one of the highest-ranking Krithari. Ryan straightened. Thanks." Kalos studied him, then looked at Ziara. "He is not as weak as I expected." Ziara gave a slow nod. "He is different." Ryan raised an eyebrow. That almost sounded like a compliment. Kalos then turned to the crowd. "The human has fought well. He has earned the right to stand beside the Krithari. Let this be known." The warriors stomped their boots in approval. Even the ones who didn't like him had to accept it. Ryan let out a breath. "Does this mean no one's trying to throw me off a glacier anymore?" Ziara sighed. "For now." Kalos gave a short nod and left, leaving Ryan and Zara alone near the edge of the arena. A cold wind swept through the icy cliffs. The blue glow of the Krithari torches reflected off the snow, making the night feel almost dreamlike. Ryan glanced at Ziara. "So, did I impress you?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked toward the edge of the platform, looking over the frozen landscape. "The last human who set foot here didn't survive," she murmured. "None ever have." Ryan walked up beside her. "Well, I guess I like breaking records." Ziara smirked. "Or you're just reckless." He shrugged. "That too." For a moment, they just stood there. The air between them felt different now, less tense, more comfortable. Ziara turned slightly, studying him. "You do not fear me anymore." Ryan met her gaze. "I never feared you. I just didn't know if I'd survive being near you." She tilted her head. "Is there a difference?" He smiled. "Yeah, one means I run away. The other means I stay and figure things out." Ziara looked at him for a long moment. Then, to Ryan's surprise, she stepped closer. "You are a strange man," she said softly. Ryan's heart thumped. He hadn't noticed before, but her eyes weren't just cold. They had depth, like ice that trapped light inside. For once, he didn't have a clever reply. The wind picked up, swirling Ziara's silver-white hair around her shoulders. Then, before he could think too much, she reached out. Her fingertips brushed his hand. Ryan inhaled sharply. He expected the cold, but instead, it was warm. Ziara looked just as startled as he did. "Strange," she whispered. Ryan swallowed. "I'll take that as a compliment." She didn't pull away. For the first time since he met her, her touch didn't freeze him. For the first time, she wasn't afraid to touch him at all. Ryan stood completely still, staring at Ziara's fingers lightly resting against his hand. Her touch was always cold, like the heart of a glacier, but now it was warm. Ziara, too, looked shocked. She slowly turned her palm over, pressing it flat against his. Ryan shivered, not from the cold, but from something else entirely. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Ryan smirked, trying to play it cool. "Guess I have a talent for breaking the rules of physics." She shot him a look, but there was no anger this time, just curiosity. Her people feared her touch. It had always been a weapon, a curse, a thing to be avoided. But Ryan was standing there, unfrozen, unharmed. She curled her fingers around his. "You are not like the others." Ryan grinned. "You keep saying that," starting to sound like a compliment. Ziara blinked, then quickly pulled her hand away, her usual stoic expression returning. "Do not get ahead of yourself, human." Ryan chuckled. Too late. A loud horn suddenly echoed through the icy cliffs, breaking the moment. Ziara's posture stiffened. "The council summons us." Ryan sighed. "I'm guessing they didn't call us to say good job, Ryan. We totally accept you now." Ziara shook her head. "They will have questions." Ryan rubbed his temples. "Great. More alien politics. Can't wait." The Krethari Council Hall. The council hall was a massive cavern carved into the side of an ice mountain, with pillars of glowing blue crystal casting eerie light over the warriors and elders seated in a semicircle. At the center stood Elder Kalos, his piercing gaze locked onto Ziara. "You touched him," he stated. Ziara's jaw tightened. "I did." Kalos' expression darkened. "And he still breathes." Ryan gave an awkward wave. Yeah, still here. No frostbite either." The murmurs around the hall grew louder. The Krethari warriors exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't just unusual, it was unheard of. A younger warrior, Vale, stepped forward, glaring at Ryan. "This is unnatural. The Frostborn's touch has never spared anyone before. What makes him different?" Ryan smirked. "Must be my winning personality." Ziara shot him a warning glance. "Not the time for jokes." Kalos raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "This could mean many things," he said gravely. "It could be a sign of change, or a sign of danger." Ziara lifted her chin. "It is neither." Kalos studied her. "Then explain." Ziara hesitated. The truth was, she didn't know. All her life, she had been warned that her touch was deadly, but Ryan had proven something was different. Ryan, sensing her struggle, stepped forward. "Look, I get that this is a big deal for you guys, but maybe this isn't a bad thing. Maybe Ziara's gift isn't a curse. Maybe it just needed the right person." The room fell silent. Ziara's eyes widened slightly. "The right person?" Kalos exhaled through his nose. "You speak boldly, human." Ryan shrugged. "Hey, it's kind of my thing." The elder studied him for a long moment before speaking. "There is one way to settle this." Ryan groaned. "Let me guess. Another fight." Kalos shook his head. "No, a trial." Ziara's expression darkened. "What kind of trial?" Kalos turned to her. "If he truly is different, then let him prove it. Tomorrow, at dawn, he will face the cold depths." The crowd stirred. Warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Even Ziara looked tense. Ryan frowned. "Okay, see, that name alone already sounds bad." Ziara turned to him, her voice low. "The cold depths is an ancient ice cavern beneath our city. No human has ever entered and returned." Ryan sighed. "Of course not." Kalos' voice echoed through the hall. "If he survives, he stays." Ryan glanced at Ziara, then back at the council. He cracked his knuckles. "All right, let's do this." Ryan stood at the edge of the cold depths, staring into the dark abyss below. The cavern's entrance was a jagged hole in the icy ground, lined with glowing blue frost. A strange mist curled from within, moving like it was alive. Behind him, a crowd had gathered, Krithara warriors, elders, and even Zyra. Ryan turned to her. So, how dangerous are we talking here? Like mild frostbite dangerous, or never seen again dangerous? Zyra's icy blue eyes met his. No one who enters ever returns. Ryan sighed. Right, of course. Kalos stepped forward, his deep voice echoing. The human has accepted the trial. He will descend alone. If he survives the night, he will be recognized. Ryan smirked. Recognized as what? Insane. A few warriors chuckled. Kalos, however, remained stern. As one of us. Ryan's smirk faded. That was different. He glanced at Zyra, but she looked away, her face unreadable. Ryan exhaled. All right then, time for a little cave exploration. He turned, stepping into the darkness. Inside the cold depths, Ryan's boots crunched against the frost-covered stone as he carefully made his way down. The temperature dropped instantly, his breath turned to mist, and an unnatural chill crept into his bones. A soft hum filled the air, a sound that wasn't quite natural. Ryan narrowed his eyes. Okay, definitely haunted. He stepped forward, and suddenly, the ice beneath him cracked. Before he could react, the ground collapsed. He plunged straight down. The ice phantom. Ryan hit the ground hard, rolling onto his back with a groan. Okay, ow. He pushed himself up and took in his surroundings. The cavern was massive, its walls glowing with strange, shifting light. Giant ice formations stretched high into the ceiling like frozen fangs. But something else was here. A shadow moved in the mist. Ryan tensed. He wasn't alone. A whisper echoed around him, carried by the cold wind. You do not belong here. Ryan turned slowly. A figure materialized from the ice itself. It was shaped like a Krithari, but its body was semi-transparent, made entirely of swirling frost. Its eyes glowed an eerie white. Ryan swallowed. So, you're a ghost, huh? The figure's voice was like the wind through dead trees. I am the guardian of the depths. None may pass. Ryan sighed. Of course there's a guardian. Why wouldn't there be? The phantom lashed out. Ryan barely dodged as a spear of ice shot toward him, missing by inches. Okay, let's talk about this, he called, jumping back. The phantom stepped forward, ice forming with each step. There is nothing to discuss. Ryan clenched his fists. Yeah, well, I didn't come all this way to die in a frozen basement. A different kind of strength. The phantom attacked again, sending a blast of icy wind toward him. Ryan braced himself, but instead of dodging, he stepped forward. The freezing wind hit him head-on. Ice began to form on his arms, creeping up his skin, but he didn't stop. The phantom hesitated. Ryan exhaled, his breath misting. You're not gonna scare me off. The ice around his arms started melting. Ryan blinked. Wait, melting? The phantom's glowing eyes narrowed. What are you? Ryan smirked. No idea, but I'm not giving up. The guardian paused. Then, slowly, it bowed its head. Ryan frowned. Wait, what? The phantom's voice was softer now. You do not fear the cold. You do not fear death. You may pass. The ice around Ryan's arms vanished. The cavern's mist parted, revealing a hidden path leading deeper into the depths. Ryan exhaled. Well, that was easy. The phantom's voice followed him. Not all trials are won with strength. Some are won with courage. Ryan smirked. Yeah, I'll remember that for my next ice ghost encounter. He stepped onto the path. The trial wasn't over yet. Ryan took a deep breath and stepped forward. The hidden path twisted deeper into the cold depths, its icy walls glowing with an eerie blue light. The air was thick with frost, but something felt different. It wasn't just cold anymore. It was alive. Ryan's instincts screamed at him to turn back, but he wasn't about to quit now. Not after everything. He had faced warriors, death traps, and an actual ice ghost. He wasn't stopping now. The heart of the depths. After a long descent, The path opened into a vast underground chamber. At its center stood a pillar of frozen crystal, pulsing with a strange light. Ryan stepped closer. Then the ice cracked. A wave of energy blasted outward. The entire chamber shook. Ryan shielded his face as icy wind roared around him, and then a figure appeared within the crystal. A woman. She looked ancient and powerful, her body made of shifting frost, her eyes glowing silver. Ryan exhaled. Let me guess. Another test. The woman's voice was deep and echoing. No, you have already passed. Ryan blinked. Wait. What? The ice around her melted, and she stepped forward. You are the first outsider to stand before me and remain unbroken. Ryan crossed his arms. Well, I'd say I'm mildly frostbitten broken, but sure. The woman studied him. Tell me, human, why do you seek to prove yourself? Ryan hesitated. The answer should have been obvious, so Ziyara's people would accept him. But that wasn't the whole truth, was it? He thought of Ziyara, her strength, her fire, the way she looked at him when she thought no one was watching. Ryan exhaled. Because she's worth it. The woman's glowing eyes softened. Then take this. She lifted her hand, and a shard of glowing ice formed between her fingers. This is the heart of the depths, a symbol of our people's strength. Ryan hesitated, then reached out and took it. The ice was warm in his hands. The woman smiled. Go, human. Your place among us is earned. And with that, she vanished. A warm welcome. Ryan climbed out of the depths just as the first light of morning touched the horizon. The gathered Krithari gasped. He held up the glowing ice shard. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Kalos stepped forward. His stern expression softened. He knelt. One by one, the Krithari followed. Ryan blinked. Did I just get promoted? Ziyara stepped toward him. Her expression unreadable. They kneel to warriors who prove themselves. Ryan smirked. So, that means I get to marry the strongest, most beautiful warrior here. Ziyara's lips curved. I already agreed to that. Ryan grinned, just making sure. She stepped closer, her icy blue eyes locking onto his. You could have died. Ryan's smirk softened. Yeah, but then I wouldn't get to do this. He leaned in, brushing his lips against hers. For a moment, time froze. And then, for the first time in her life, her ice didn't spread. Ziyara's eyes widened. Ryan grinned. Guess I really do have a warm touch. The Krithari cheered. For the first time ever, a human had become one of them. And for the first time ever, Ziyara's kiss wasn't cold.